Here's what's coming up on the world today. Britain set to become the first country in the world to use the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. The number of coronavirus cases around the world rises beyond 64 million. Plus, Pope Francis condemns what he calls terroristic massacre of farmers in northern Nigeria. Thanks everyone for joining us on the program today. I'm Oluwale, and it's mixed reactions out of the UK today as the country is set to become the first in the world to approve the Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus vaccine, paving the way for mass vaccination. The Pfizer-BioNTech jab is the fastest vaccine to go from concept to reality, taking only 10 months to follow the same steps that normally spans 10 years.
Following months of research and testing, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine is set to be ready to be rolled out in the UK over the next couple of days, jumping ahead of the United States and Europe to become the West's first country to formally endorse a jab it says should reach the most vulnerable people early next week. The world's big powers have been racing for a vaccine for months to begin the long road to recovery, and getting there first may be seen as a coup for UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government, which has faced criticism over its handling of the crisis.
We have to announce that today the first global emergency use authorization has been granted for a phase 3 clinical data-backed COVID-19 vaccine by the MHRA, the UK regulatory agency. We have started immediately the process of delivering our vaccine.
The approval of a jab for use almost exactly a year since the novel coronavirus emerged in Wuhan, China, is a triumph for science, Pfizer boss Albert Bourla and his German biotechnology partner BioNTech. But the breakneck speed at which approval was given drew criticism from Brussels, where, in an unusually blunt statement, the European Union's drug regulator said its longer procedure to approve vaccines was more appropriate as it was based on more evidence and required more checks. As for how the vaccine will be given, Chair of the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization, Dr. June Rain, says older care home residents and their carers will be the highest priority to receive the vaccine, followed by those over 80 years of age and frontline health workers, and there could be operational flexibility in where the vaccine could be distributed first.
Mr. Speaker,
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says vaccinations will not be made compulsory.
I strongly urge people to take up the vaccine, but it is no part of our culture or our ambition in this country to make vaccines mandatory. That's not how we do things.
In the meantime, China has given emergency approval for 3 experimental vaccines and has inoculated around 1 million people since July. Russia has been vaccinating frontline workers after approving its Sputnik 5 shot in August before it had completed late-stage testing on safety and efficacy.
Joining us now to discuss this is leading virologist and chairman, Ministerial Expert Advisory Committee on COVID-19 in Nigeria, Professor Oluwale Tomori. He joins us from our studio in Abuja. Professor Tomori, thank you so much for joining us on The World today.
It's my pleasure.
What do you make of this huge feat for Britain?
I think it's a great step forward. It's something that any country that cares about its people would take the steps that it has taken. In any case, I remember in your report that Britain is not actually the first to start using. You mentioned the Russians have used. The Chinese have also given emergency user approval for that. So, you know, it was the logical thing for them, for the kind of problems that they have in their country, to take the right step. And I think it's the right thing to do for the government to take that action.
Yeah, China and Russia, they've both given approval to their own vaccine candidates, but this is the first for Pfizer and BioNTech. But there has been criticism about the speed at which the vaccine was ready. Not only this one, but the other ones that we've seen in Russia and China as well. But yet this one claims 95% efficacy in preventing illnesses. How long does it usually take to have a vaccine with this much efficacy? And is timing everything when it comes to developing the right vaccine?
Thank you very much. In the past, it would take you anything from 10 to 20 years to get from development to use of the vaccine. But then you remember, we had Ebola, and that took 2 years. The world is moving fast. And this one, the larger the problem, the faster people react. Ebola was more like an African problem, and so we did that in 2 years. This is a global problem, and people are taking faster action. And I don't know why people are feeling a bit on how, I mean, it's natural to think that because you did it in 2 years or 5 years, therefore 2 months or 10 months is too short. But remember, every step of the way, all of the steps that need to be taken have been meticulously scrutinized. I was on one of the WHO committee that looked at the Ebola vaccine. And we went through every documentation that was provided. And that was in 2 years. People then said, oh, it has taken a short time. But now things have worked faster. Once the actions have been taken and the documentations have been well scrutinized, there's nothing really to be afraid of. The world is moving fast, and things are moving fast. The kind of vehicle that used to move in Nigeria in those days is not the one we're using today. So many other things are moving. I didn't go to school until I was 6. Children go to school at the age of 2. So why are we surprised?
All right, then, yeah, things are definitely moving fast. By next week, Britain becomes the first country to effectively use the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, and other countries are waiting in line. Understandably, countries are eager to get their hands on the vaccine. What position is Nigeria taking at this time?
Well, first of all, those countries will satisfy their own people first. And I'm sorry to say, we're going to get the crumbs at the end of it all. But having said that, Nigeria has been working with WHO in the COVAX initiative to ensure that we're not left behind. How soon we'll get it is difficult to say. But I don't see us getting anything until about the middle of next year, if we're lucky.
Yeah. Professor, just before I let you go, I'm sure you've seen some videos about, health officials skeptical about this vaccine. And, a lot of people are skeptical, taking into account this was developed in 10 months. It was effectively the race for a vaccine. So what do you say to people that are skeptical about this vaccine and the components of the vaccine?
I think people who are skeptical have a right to be skeptical because of the fake news and fake information. That's what they hear. But they should try and sift the fact from the fiction. There's so much fiction going on about all these vaccines, 5G, all sorts of things. But if they just sit down and look at the information that's available, they have really nothing to be afraid of. I can say with confidence here, before everybody, if that vaccine comes to this country, I'll be one of the first to get it, because I trust in what they've done. And all of we will to sift out the fact. And from the experience we have, let me say one thing. No leader, let me not talk about African leaders, no leader in some other parts of the world would deliberately take anything that would poison their people. Both the Chinese, the Russians, the British. So why will you think that, we should be afraid of it? For us, we're not even going to get it for some time to come. So we also have the opportunity to watch and see what is happening. They start using it next week. No, we see what happens at the end of next year. At the end of the year, what the situation is. And we can't read and know. Then all those who have fear will see that there was nothing, absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And I'm saying it confidently, if that vaccine comes to this country, I will be one of the first to get it.
Professor, you're exuding a lot of confidence in this vaccine. But here in Nigeria, would you say, are we still on track to fighting COVID-19?
We've never been on track. Let's not deceive ourselves. I mean, you know, the data we get, I keep saying it, our data is incomplete. And I used to say one thing, incomplete data is as good as fake data. If you're giving me the number you're testing, I mean, you're giving me the number of positive without telling me the number of testing. If you're giving me information about, you know, when you say 20 or 30 are positive today without telling me when you collected those samples, then that information is not complete. People should be given all the data and all the information. And that's why today a lot of people go around believing that there's no COVID in this country. You remember when we started having the first drop in numbers? I mean, when we noticed it, we mentioned that something is wrong. And we discovered that it was because we're testing less. It took the government like another 2 weeks to inform the people that, oh, the reason why during the Salah or whatever we got this because we're not testing, people were on holidays. Your information should be on time because people will make up their mind based on the information they have if you don't provide them with the details. So it's difficult to now convince people that, you know what you're saying is correct. So when you are doing anything, open yourself out and tell all the people what exactly you are doing. People are not stupid. So they know, and then you can give it to them, show it to them before them, and they will believe what you're doing. We've never had opportunity for trusting our government, and that's what they are paying for now because of the lack of credibility that we have with them. They lied to us before, they continue to lie to us, and that's why nobody takes what they are saying. But yet the truth is there. COVID is around. It's still over the place. I used to joke that the only person wearing a mask in my country is a masquerade in my village. But wear your masquerade. I mean, sorry, wear your mask, because COVID is still around. You are the important person in this COVID situation, not the government. You are the one that will get COVID. You are the one that will die if you get COVID. Government will not die. So please protect yourself.
On that note, I think that's very, very good advice, Professor Tomori. Thank you so much for joining us on The World today.
It's my pleasure.
In a related development, Italy is planning to launch a massive free coronavirus vaccination program early next year, with health workers and the elderly high on the list. The health minister made this known to Parliament today, saying the government has options to buy 202 million COVID-19 vaccine shots from various companies. Incidentally, Italy was the first Western country that was hit hard by the coronavirus, registering more than 56,300 deaths since the outbreak emerged in February. It was the second highest toll in Europe, following Britain's, and it registered over 1.62 million cases to date. Many in Italy have been responding to Britain rolling out the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine in a couple of days and think it's a hasty move, while others look forward to their country following suit at the start of next year. Brussels Airport has been running mock tests this week to showcase their readiness to distribute COVID-19 vaccines once they are available. The European Union is running rapid vaccine regulatory processes. The EU drugs regulator, the European Medicines Agency, said it could give conditional marketing approval for Pfizer's vaccine by December the 29th and make a decision on Moderna's by January the 12th. In the European Union, it is up to each country in the 27-member bloc to start distributing vaccines to their populations.
Yeah, we certainly will be ready to handle all the vaccines. We have been preparing for this for months, but also for years with the specialization in pharma at Brussels Airport. We already handled 20% worldwide, the whole worldwide vaccines here through Brussels Airport before the COVID vaccine. So we are specialized, we have got the capacity, and we have aligned all the stakeholders to have good procedures, to have fast lanes for the vaccine.
The main challenge we face when transporting and distributing the vaccines is maintaining the temperature throughout the whole supply chain. So all the different operators that handle the shipments have to work together in order to avoid any deviation in the temperature during the transport.
Coming up after the break. Singapore approved sale of lab-grown meat. Would you try it? Well, you'll have your answer in a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the program. Some breaking news at this hour now. President Muhammadu Buhari agrees to address the House of Representatives on the security situation in the country as requested by the lawmakers. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, says a date for the address has been agreed on and will be made public soon. He adds that the President is concerned about the state of insecurity and will speak to Nigerians on the issue through their representatives soon. Well, back to our coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic. The number of coronavirus cases around the world continues to rise. The figure currently is put at 64,037,353 at the last count, and still counting. The number of cases in the United States is also on the rise, going beyond 13,700,000, followed by India with over 9.4 million cases. Number of global deaths is above 1.4 million, with the United States still having the highest number of deaths, set at over 270,000. Interestingly, the region of the Americas was the largest contributor for new weekly cases last week, while the European region reported a continued decrease in new weekly cases. However, experts warn the U.S. daily deaths will even surge to a higher level in December, as the country is estimated to witness a new wave of infections in the coming weeks following nationwide travel during the Thanksgiving holiday. To security matters now, Pope Francis has condemned the killing of farmers and villagers in northeast Nigeria by suspected Islamist militants as a terrorist massacre that offended the name of God. He said this during his weekly general audience held virtually from his library in the Vatican. That's because of the coronavirus pandemic. 43 people were beheaded in the attack on Saturday, which began in the morning in the village of Zabamari. Pope Francis prayed that God would welcome the deceased into his peace and comfort their families, and that he converts the hearts of those who commit such horrors which gravely offend God's name. Nigeria's ambassador to China, Baba Hamad Jida, says Nigeria hopes to deepen its ties with China through friendly exchanges. Having been in China since 2017, he says he did not leave the country during the pandemic, choosing to remain and take charge of Nigerians, especially in Wuhan. He says Nigeria and China fought the pandemic together during the outbreak, receiving support from a Chinese construction company. Also, that with the coronavirus situation now under control, the major focus of China's bilateral cooperation has shifted to global health.
China believes in multilateralism. China does not operate alone. China must ensure that other countries of the world also get healthy. Maybe that is the reason His Excellency President Xi Jinping contributed the sum or pledged the sum of $2 billion during the last World Health Assembly. Maybe that is why China is every day supporting the World Health Organization, because it is very important for other countries of the world to be healthy, for us to conduct bilateral relations, especially African countries. We cannot wait to see China sending millions of vaccines to Africa, so that the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation and the Belt and Road Initiative, all this, we have to have healthy countries, to have healthy bilateral and multilateral relationship with China.
While the UK has been the first in the world to approve the COVID-19 vaccine, the US has set guidelines for how the vaccine will be distributed once it's approved. This all occurs while practices by the Trump administration are under investigation by the Department of Justice. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Maria Bird, reports.
The U.S. is faced with watching the President of the U.S. potentially being investigated for funneling money to the White House in exchange for a presidential pardon. This investigation began as court documents were released to the Justice Department on yesterday. This new legal battle for the president is happening while the President-elect Biden and the CDC and other scientists in the U.S. are working to devise a plan for the releasing of the COVID-19 vaccine.
Towards the middle and end of December, we will be having available about 40 million doses of vaccines for 20 million people that will be allocated to the states according to population, and then locally you'll have the option with recommendations from the CDC and the ACIP, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, to make the distribution according to the high priority groups. As we get into January, February, and March, and we get more and more of the priority groups, we will soon, as we get into April, have vaccines for the general population. From the time the virus was recognized in January of 2020 to the time we're putting it in a person's arm in December of 2020 is extraordinary, unprecedented, and quite frankly, Governor, unexpected.
The pandemic very sadly and unfortunately laid bare what were pre-existing structural and social realities that really predisposed particular communities to be hardest hit by this pandemic, and hardest hit from a health perspective and hardest hit from an economic perspective. There is hesitancy that's pronounced in terms of Black or African Americans.
In the last few months of President Trump's administration, there is much turmoil in the White House, and Americans are waiting for the approval of the COVID-19 vaccine. From Washington, Maria Bird, Channel Television News.
Now, imagine eating lab-grown meat. That's closer to being a reality as Singapore has given U.S. startup Eat Just the green light to sell its lab-grown chicken meat in what the firm today said is the world's first regulatory approval for so-called clean meat that does not come from slaughtered animals. Co-founder and CEO Josh Tetrick says the meat to be sold as nuggets, as you can see there, will be priced at premium chicken prices when it first launches in a restaurant in Singapore in the very near term. Demand for alternatives to regular meat is surging due to concerns about health, animal welfare, and the environment. But so-called clean or cultured meat, which is grown from animal muscle cells in a lab, is still at a nascent stage given high production costs. Singapore, a city-state of 5.7 million, currently only produces about 10% of its food, but has set out ambitious plans to raise that over the next decade by supporting high-tech farming and new means of food production. Well, it's left for you to decide, but for me, I'm not so sure about that. But that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Oluwale.